Hi, and welcome to the Boat Princess podcast. My name is Nikki Vo, and I'm your host. I am a boat owner, a marina owner, a director on the Marina Industries Association, and a huge advocate for boating. In this series, I'm sharing the stories from every nook of the boating industry with the intention of encouraging more women to join me and for more women to get behind the helm too. I want to share the experience and opportunities of boating, of the boating industry, and I want you to join me as I bring the conversations and answer all the questions you've had. Boating is not just for the glamorous and rich and famous. It's full of beautiful and interesting people making the most of our natural environment and getting out there, enjoying the waterways. So let's let off the lines, take over the helm, and escape to the world of boating. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Boat Princess podcast. I know I get excited about my episodes, but this one I am super excited about. Keeping Lisa's energy in a room is quite incredible. She's got an amazing energy that we're going to share with you today. Lisa Blair is an incredible sailor who has been the fastest person to sail solo, non-stop and unassisted around Antarctica. She holds 5 world records and she's just a bit amazing, really. So, Lisa Blair, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Nikki. That was an awesome intro.
But you and I have seen each other at a few events before, and I'm always blown away by your amazing energy.
Look, you got to be out there loving what you're doing in life. And I've always had the opinion that if I'm loving what my work is, then it's not work. It's just living my life. And so I bring that into my sailing and into my projects and into everything that I do.
Yeah, you really do. You really do. So, and those projects are not the average projects, okay?
They're minor. What are you talking about?
I mean, for goodness sake, the Antarctic. Why the Antarctic?
Yes. Well, you know what? I get asked this question all the time, and I actually don't have a specific answer as to why Antarctica. I think it was like a combination of things at the time. I just finished sailing around the world with the Clipper race.
Of course you had.
Well, you know, minor details, right? And that was a crude race around the planet. And I learned so much, and I had such a growth opportunity as a sailor. And I'd only been sailing about a year before then as a deckhand, working on a charter boat in the Whitsundays. And so for me, that was like this eye-opener. It was the first time I'd done sponsorship. It was the first time that I had, you know, sailed in the Southern Ocean or had a night watch or any of those things. And after that, I was thinking to myself, well, I've just done what I never thought was possible before for me, and B, like that I thought I would be even capable of doing. And here I am, a circumnavigator. Like, what else could I do? And I sort of came up with the idea that, well, if I can do it with crew, surely I can do it solo. And then to do it solo, you need to do something pretty remarkable. And I wanted to use it as an activation for my climate action message. And so Antarctica seemed like a natural flow on from that. And
that does make sense.
Yeah.
Massive amount of sense for climate action in particular.
Exactly. And also, like, it randomly kind of came about because I was trying to convince a complete stranger to lend me his boat to race in the solo Trans-Tasman yacht race. Never met the guy before. And and I was like, hi, my name's Lisa. I've just sailed around the world with the Clipper race and I want to borrow your boat to race across the Tasman Sea. Oh, by the way, I've never sailed solo before, but I want to do this race solo. Will you lend me your boat? And this guy's obviously saying, no. And then he like threw out the idea that, like, if I wanted to do more records or races or, like, you know, more ocean sailing, that maybe if I combined that race, which was run once every 4 years, and it's about a 1,200 nautical mile yacht race, and if I combined that race with like a bigger project, then I would be able to maybe get the sponsorship and buy the boat.
Yep.
And he had his eyes on this Antarctica record that this Russian sailor had set in 2008, Fedor Konyakov. And so he said, go home, Google this guy, have a look at it, and let me know what you think. And I looked it up and I saw that there was this guy who had sailed 4 times around the world solo. He had hot air ballooned around the world. He had dog sled teams to the North Pole, South Pole, and done all these. He'd climbed Mount Everest 4 times, just the most incredible adventurer.
Wow.
And he'd gone and done this Antarctica trip and completed it in 102 days. And I looked at it thinking, yeah, nah, if I tried that, I'd probably never come home. Like I honestly didn't think at that point, and this is way back in 2014, that would be something I would ever be capable of doing. And that, like, you know, it just seemed like a suicide mission. And so I kind of paused it, but I couldn't kind of shake that idea of like, what if, and what kind of boat would I need and how cold would it get? And so eventually I decided that, yeah, I'm gonna challenge that record.
Wow. So let's unpack a little bit of that, shall we? Because, okay, first of all, 2017, you do the all-female team Rolex Sydney to Hobart.
Yes.
Right? And you said that was just after your first year sailing. So no,
we're a little out of timeline here. Okay. So 2014, I decided that I was going to do Antarctica.
Yes.
2015, I was able to buy the boat with the help of my mum, and we bought it about a month before the Rolex Sydney to Hobart, and so I whacked a team together and we raced it to Hobart.
And they were all female?
No, they were a mixed team.
That was a mixed team.
And then I went off and did the first Antarctica attempt in 2017.
Yep.
And when I came back from that, about a month and a half later, I put together partnered with the Magenta Project.
Really? It was
YAFTA. And then we did the Sydney to Hobart with the all-girl team and did a mentor program for women in sailing. And then I went on to do the Australia record, second Antarctica, and here we are.
My goodness.
Planning in New Zealand.
Actually, of course they were the other way around.
Yeah.
Sydney to Hobart's at the end of the year.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes so much
sense. And I left in like January 2017 for that project. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you left for that project.
First Antarctica.
Yes. How did you feel when you left for that project?
Great question. It was a bit wild actually, because I never had 100% funding. I never have had 100% funding for any project. And so I'm doing absolutely everything I can to just get to the start line. And for me, that project took me 3.5 years to get off the ground, to actually get enough funding, to get the boat refitted, to get it over to Western Australia. And even the night before leaving, I don't think I got to bed until about 4 a.m. And then I was up at 6 because I was trying to download books and stuff like that I hadn't, were just extras that I hadn't had time to do, and fill out my border force paperwork. And there was just so many jobs, and I'm just one person. Like I don't have like a full team like a lot of the French sailors and stuff do. It's just me, and a whole heap of awesome volunteers that sign up to donate their time. And so I was frantic that morning, just trying to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything, hadn't done something, hadn't just ticked all those boxes. And we were just like saying, I was hugging everyone goodbye at like 9 a.m. and we cast off the lines for the boat. And I'd been just so intent on just getting the boat out to the harbour to get to the start line that I'd forgotten to kind of even really consider what that would feel like. Yep. And as we kind of motored out, or I was getting towed out initially, I sort of looked over at the breakwall, and in Albany in Western Australia, there's this like markets that happen that day, and it's like a really community hub right at the marina there. So there was hundreds and hundreds of people, and there was kids with big signs up saying, "Good luck, Lisa," and like everyone was tooting their car horns, and everyone had walked out the breakwall to like see me off. Yeah. And I got so overloaded with emotion. And at the same time, it was like the first time it hit that I was actually leaving.
Yes.
Like it wasn't this mystery thing I'd thought about, and I tear up, like I'm tearing up now talking about it, but it wasn't this mystery thing that I was like this long thing that I was still working towards. Like it was happening that day. And the other thing with all of that was that I'd spent 3.5 years planning for every worst case scenario in the Southern Ocean. So what would happen if I dismasted, if I lost my keel, if I lost my rudder, if I hauled the boat with an iceberg? What would happen if I broke my leg at sea? What would happen if I cracked a rib? Like all of these scenarios. What if I got the flu? Like just anything you could possibly think of. And suddenly the reality was that I was going to go out and I was going to have to face those challenges. And it was like that crushing like moment of like fear, anxiety, self-doubt, and I started having a panic attack.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so we were like motoring out and I just started shaking. My heart rate elevated. I had 2 volunteers on the boat that were helping me get the sails up. And so they were busy doing that. But I had like thousands of people on the foreshore watching me go. And I'm trying to like cringeworthy smile at them and wave and not have tears pour down my face. And like, but internally I was freaking out like just insanely. And it took me about a few minutes and as we were still motoring through all these people, and I just remember reminding myself that it was kind of like that self-talk of like, you've got this, like you've done the work, you've ticked the boxes, like you've got this. And so for me, I reminded myself that, hey, yeah, you've gone through that process of procedure and preparation. You've thought of all the scenarios. You've got combat techniques in place, procedures to help you stay safe in those different situations. Now you've just got to go and enjoy the sailing. And so I had to like kind of remind myself. And once I had come to terms with the fact that it was happening like now, then it was just so much fun and so exciting. And I was like jumping up and down around the boat and running around and smiling and waving at everybody and just having so much fun with it. But yeah, even like a few hours later, as like the last of Australia fell behind the horizon, and I probably wasn't going to see land until Cape Horn, which was about 6,000 nautical miles away.
Which takes how long?
That would have been, well, for me on the first trip, it was 50 days at sea. So, and I didn't see another human, another boat, anything in that time. And so that, watching, like it was sunset by that point, and I was just watching Australia fall behind the horizon. And I just took a minute on deck to just appreciate it and sit in the moment and enjoy the view. And I had 2 container ships pass me, and I just stood on the deck and I just stared at these boats just thinking, I probably won't see another boat for 50 days. And it was like that real coming to terms with the isolation that I was about to go and experience, and the challenges and everything associated with spending up to 3 months in the Southern Ocean all on your own. Yeah,
because I mean, sailing solo, massive difference to sailing with crew.
Yes.
Why did you decide to do it solo?
Initially, very early stages, I decided solo sailing was something I'd be keen to do, mainly because I'd been reading like Kay Cotty's book, Jessica Watson, Robert Knox-John, like all these stories, and I just thought they were remarkable people having remarkable adventures. And then when I did the Clipper, like there was this thing. My skipper was brilliant. Like he never held back on teaching me something I wanted to know. But there was always this thing in the world of sailing, especially as a girl, like this is a decade ago, where just learning things like how to fix an engine became really hard to learn or to find someone willing to teach you. And so I sort of thought, well, if there's no one else there, I'll have to figure it out and I'll have to learn. And so I decided that I'd try the solo sailing as a way of pushing me to learn more about sailing. And then the other factor is once I became like a captain of boats, I find when I'm sailing across a long distance with a crew, I'm more concerned about their comfort. Are they having fun? Are they safe than myself? And I lose that element of just enjoying the moment because my thoughts are consistently like, oh, Joe Blow's seasick today, so I'll take his shift. So then I'm doing double shifts anyway and I'm not getting sleep. And then Sally, she seems a bit tired today, so I'll take her shift tomorrow. And just that crew management, I really enjoy sailing with people. I do find on the longer stretches, I enjoy them solo because I only have to worry about me. And with something like Antarctica, I was comfortable putting myself in a real position of risk because I knew what I was capable of. But taking other people down there, putting them in a potentially risky situation in the Southern Ocean where anything can happen, I wasn't comfortable with that.
Wow, that is so you. No, it's just that you, like with your whole ethos now with the climate action, that you're putting something else before you.
Yes, exactly.
And that is just the fact that you're thinking about the crew all the time rather than yourself.
Well, the crew aren't there to serve me. It's as much their experience. And also, like, I think the big thing with people going, especially on their first ocean passage, you want to make sure that they have a really positive experience so that they go on to do more of it because it's an incredible world out there. And there's so many bad experiences people can get in those first time sailing that stopped them from wanting to do more. And so I wanted to make sure that, anyone coming on these trips, it's fun, it's lively. If you need a rest, I'll take your watch. And it's that dynamic, but also like if I've got crew and I'm in a storm, I'm not sleeping. It doesn't matter whether it's my watch or not. I'm making sure they're okay, or I'm on the one on deck instead of them because I'm willing to take that risk. I'm not willing to put another person in that position. I think the solo sailing sort of stemmed from that. And things like engine maintenance and stuff, like I really didn't start learning that until I bought a boat and had things break in the middle of the ocean. And then I'd phone a friend and say, hey, so, I just had my starter motor blow up and I had a meter-high flames in the middle of my boat. And can you organize a new starter motor to be sent to me and then throw it to me from boat to boat? And then I would have to work out how to uninstall a starter motor and put the new one on. And I'd never done it before. But, it's the attitude you take to sailing is a big player in how much joy and experience you get out of it as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of things in that scenario. One was Kay Cotty. I just need to mention to our listeners that we've done 3 interviews with Kay Cotty.
Kay is awesome.
Is amazing, isn't she? And they are thoroughly good podcasts to listen to because she, just like Lisa, is an amazing, incredible woman with a confidence. But inside, she's very shy as well. So it's a really interesting set of interviews we do with her and all the things that she's done with sailing and beyond. And then you've gone from crew to solo. You've talked about being on a boat with crew.
Mm-hmm.
Tell the listeners about when you're on a boat solo, how do you keep it moving while you're actually living normally? So you're sleeping, you're eating, all those sorts of things, because they would have no idea how you do that. So
it's quite
what do you do?
It's quite a unique strategy that I employ. And like one of the biggest factors for me is safety trumps everything. So it's not, I'm not putting the boat in a position of risk and making decisions because I want to sleep a bit longer or something like that. And so for me, the collision regulations require we keep a good lookout by all available means. So that can be our radar, our AIS, but it's also our eyeballs. And so for me, when I'm near known hazards, so anywhere close to land, anywhere near major shipping lanes, known traffic zones, fishing areas, reefs, islands, rocks, anything like that, I won't sleep for more than 20 minutes at a time. So I'll do a sort of 4 to 6 hour window of micro sleeps at 20 minutes each interval. But every 20 minutes, I'm scanning the horizon for traffic and I'm looking at the instruments, I'm checking the radar, and then I try and go back for another 20 minutes sleep. And the goal of that is like if you've ever kind of gotten up to go to the toilet in the middle of the night, you don't kind of wake up completely, but you're coherent enough to make safe and smart decisions. And so you kind of wake up enough to check everything's safe and then you can fall back asleep quite okay. It normally takes me about 2 to 3 days to adjust, and I go through quite a lot of headaches and discomfort in that period. And then your body's so chronically fatigued that you can sleep in a 20-minute interval. And so it might be, it often will take 3 or 4 20-minute sleeps before I start getting sleep. And then I might get 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. And so over a 24-hour window, I'll have occurred roughly 3 to 4 hours, sometimes 2 hours, depending on the weather and all those other factors of actual sleep. In all of that's broken sleep. So for me, I find it's more of an endurance game than anything. It's that personal body management. It's the management of the boat for a long trip and making sure it's not, being overloaded or overstressed unnecessarily. But that sleep management is absolutely key to success. When I did like Antarctica, for example, that was, going to be 3 months at sea. And so in that time, though, I'm in the Southern Ocean and I'm in the southern parts of the Southern Ocean. So I was sticking between 45 degrees south and 60 south. And so occasionally in a few locations, there would be a cruise ship that would come within like 200 nautical miles of me on the AIS. Once I saw 2 fishing boats off an island that I passed, but generally there was like no one there apart from Sea Shepherd and maybe the Japanese whalers. And I'd spoken to Sea Shepherd before I left and notified them of my position and gave them my tracker. but they were dead in the water until they found a whaling ship at the time. So it wasn't, there wasn't a safety net from them there. But it meant that I could increase my sleep up to sort of 40 minutes generally, which felt like a holiday. And if I was in a really bad storm and I was just hove to and drifting through a storm, I would normally try and get like an hour to an hour and a half. But you're also then trying to sleep in a storm. So you're getting tossed into the roof of your boat, like constantly like airborne and stuff in your bum because the boat's getting tossed around in those weather. So the sleep deprivation for me is the biggest management that I have to go through. The boat runs off autopilot when I am resting and sleeping, and generally I'll run her off autopilot about 98% of the time. The reason for that is because I'm doing that energy management the whole time. So I'm consistently maintaining, am I mentally sound? Am I physically sound? Do I need rest and recovery? Do I need to increase my sleep time over performance? And even like making judgment calls on when to shake a reef out or put one in. And a reef, for those who don't know, is when you shorten the sails for the stronger winds. I'll make judgment calls on, okay, I can see a week's worth of weather. I'm in a storm that's giving me 60 to 80 knots of wind at the moment. So I'm down at my fourth reef and my storm trysail, my storm jib. And then I have one day in a high pressure system before the next storm hits. And they call these storms polar cyclones. And so they're massive, like, they're big, they're cold, quite often dumping snow or hail or sleet on the boat.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know, lots of fun, right? Come sailing with Lisa. And so the energy deficit to hoist my sail all the way up for the 12 hours of sailing I might get before the wind arrives again, in an unstable weather pattern where you're getting squalls coming through and you're having to change the sails a lot. And for me, it takes me almost 40 minutes to shake the reef because it's such a big sail and it's so over-engineered that it's really heavy. And so that for me, I would sometimes just go, okay, well, the boat can go at 5 or 6 knots for a day. And then when the next storm hits, I'll be doing 10, 12, 14, 16 knots as I'm surfing waves, and I'll make up that time. So I generally just tried to maintain a speed over 6.5 knots. And then if I was hitting that, I was cool to just leave the sails down and focus on energy recovery in the person. And then all my food's freeze dried. So it's all super simple, boil in the bag. I take extra stuff to like mix it up and make it kind of flavorful and interesting. But most of the time, I just don't have the energy to even contemplate making a meal.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There just wouldn't be the point in taking stuff because I wouldn't use it.
Yeah.
And so it's a constant game of chronic fatigue and going, am I too tired to function properly, or can I squeeze in another 3-hour block of 20-minute sleeps here and I can get back to a healthy functioning state? But that healthy functioning state is like 4 to 6 hours of sleep. So it's not great.
No. So that must really affect your mental state as well.
Massively.
That lack of sleep
massively.
Because we all, as those of us that have been lucky enough to be mums, we know that we've had that fog.
Yeah,
of lack of sleep.
I call it boat brain.
Oh, it's
instead of baby brain.
it's a different world, and it makes you just a little bit crankier, a little bit less tolerant, a little bit of everything.
Massively
right?
so, yeah.
So how do you? I mean, you've got nobody else to handle that, so you can just yell at yourself if you feel like it. But how do you manage that?
It's more, I guess, I've just learned now after, I've sailed about 55,000 miles solo now. So I've done quite a big chunk of it, twice around Antarctic and once around Australia. But the biggest thing is I've learned my trigger points when I'm hitting that cranky mode kind of thing. And what happens, I find, and I haven't had a chance to speak to scientists about this. It's just my own kind of conclusions. But what I've noticed is that when I get so chronically fatigued, I lose the ability to regulate my emotions. Okay. And so I get to a point where I call it my 2-year-old toddler hissy fits. Like I fully throw my toys and I have a hissy fit at sea. And thankfully no one's there to witness it. But I will be like putting a reef in the sail, pulling a rope, and the rope will have like a little twist in it. So it'll catch on the jammer for like half a second. I shake it, it comes free and I can pull it through. But that half a second's like the straw that broke the camel's back. And suddenly I am, and I'm saying all these bad words, screaming at the boat for not doing its job because it knows all I want to do is put the sail in so I can go back to bed, and I'm freezing cold and it's pouring rain and I'm getting smashed by waves and I'm really not happy. And then what happens is like I'll shout and scream. Sometimes I'll just break down into tears, like bawling, like full, like sobbing, like tears. Yeah. And I'm not upset. I just can't regulate that response of my body. I'm absolutely internally thinking this is ridiculous. I'm like losing my mind out here. And I'll be this complete sobbing mess while I'm still putting my reef in and working my winches and sorting the boat out. And once I've calmed down, normally takes about 10 or 15 minutes, I'll feel so guilty that I'll have to apologize to the boat, give it a little pat, say, I'm really sorry, you're doing an amazing job, you're keeping me alive out here, thank you, Climate Action Now. And I'll give it a little pat, and then I'll go inside really sheepish, and I'll hide from the weather, and I'll try and focus on sleep over performance. And so it might be one of those days that I just leave the sails down for a day and don't worry about putting them up. And I'll try and focus on that recovery. And once I get another good day of sleep in, then I'm back to perfectly normal, totally positive, happy-go-lucky. The world's wonderful. Doesn't matter if I'm getting absolutely punished at sea. I'm good. And it's really, the sleep is key to that mental health in the middle of and I think that applies to life in general. Like it's not just sailing, but if we're not looking after our bodies, then our bodies can't look after us.
Yeah.
And that applies to the mind as much as anything else.
Exactly right. And those of us who love our boating, and we do have a relationship with our boat, but yours must be massive.
I feel like I've left my kid behind when I hop off at the end of a record. Like I get this real deep like sadness in my gut, and I'll wake up a dozen times that night and feel like I need to go to the marina to check on the boat, but I can't because I'm in some town somewhere in the middle of the night. And it is a really weird, especially like after I dismasted on the first record and arriving into Cape Town after nearly losing the boat, nearly losing my life like so many times. And then just that emotion of like, I've survived. I still have a floating boat. She's in pieces, but she's floating. And then like just the battle that boat had to go through and that I went through to like survive that was like really like, I felt so bad for leaving the boat. But she's used to it now.
Yeah. So those moments that you've had out there, those near-death experiences, how does that give you a different perspective on life now?
I think the thing, particularly if we talk about the dismasting situation, I didn't understand how traumatic that experience was because I was so busy fighting to survive it that I didn't really get time to kind of address it. And so emotionally, it wasn't until later that it really hit me what I'd gone through and how close I was to losing my life like so many times that night. And that had an echo effect and it impacted it had a massive long-term impact on me, like the PTSD and the mental wellness associated with my time at sea. And I was so I was still just on that struggle street the whole time. So the mast broke at 6 p.m. and it put a hole in the side of the boat over.
How did it break? Why did it break?
It ended up being a shroud snapped, but we later found out it was electrolysis.
Okay.
So electrical cable up the mast chafed through after the time at sea. All the rigging wire was 4 months old, shouldn't have snapped. Yeah. But the electrical current consistently going through the mast had aged the stainless about a decade, and then it failed in some pretty disastrous 8-meter seas.
Wow, Jessica, are you listening right now? Do you know Jess and Brian Gatt? Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, no, so Brian was the one that assessed the boat when I got back.
There you go.
Yeah,
See, Brian assessed the boat when she got back.
The absolute guru. And there's a chapter in my book that he wrote with the riggers on the cause and effect of electrolysis in cruising boats that anyone can go and read if they buy the book Facing Fear.
So they're Maritime Protection Services. And again, we have interviewed Jess Gatt as well. So you can listen to her podcast as well. But okay, so that it's electrolysis that's caused that. It's broken the mast.
Yeah.
So before we continue, a little interlude from us here at the Boat Princess. If you'd like to be a guest on the Boat Princess, simply send us an expression of interest to our email at info@theboatprincess.com or send us a DM on Instagram. We are The Boat Princess on Instagram, and we'll send you our media kit and details as to how we work. The podcast is incredibly popular worldwide, and there is nothing like getting 45 minutes or so of somebody's ears entirely dedicated to what you're trying to achieve, or perhaps what your company is trying to achieve. So we look forward to hearing from you. It's electrolysis that's caused that. It's broken the mast.
Yeah. So the mast sheared off at deck level.
Yep.
So in all my all my pre stuff, I'd spoken to riggers, shipwrights, people who'd lost mast, and I just tried, because there's not a lot of free available information around dismasties. Like, it happens relatively frequently in the world of boating, but no one really communicates what they did or how they dealt with it, so there wasn't a lot of information out there. And what I did find was most people were saying it would probably break at the first spreader because you would lose that support and that's where it snapped. But because of the electrolysis was going through the mast itself, it also corroded around that mast collar.
Yeah.
And so it snapped clean at deck level. There was nothing sticking out of the boat anymore. And it fell to the starboard side into the ocean. And I had I think it was my third reef up and my storm jib at the time. So my two head sails were on furlers at the bow of the boat, furled away. And I had gone through the process of bolt cutters, battery operated angle grinder with cutting blades with a spare battery, always primed, ready to go in a go bag. I'd put together a dismasting kit, which had a big flathead screwdriver, a multi-grip, a pair of needle nose pliers and a hammer. And this little kit, and that was with the intention of knocking out the split pin and disconnecting the rigging rather than trying to cut the rigging. And what happened was it was the middle of the night, 1,000 nautical miles south of Cape Town in the middle of the Southern Ocean, so 6 to 8 meter seas rolling over the boat. As soon as the mast snapped, the boat flipped 180 degrees around, so sort of flat ways. So the mast and everything became an anchor. And so the waves, these 6 to 8 meter seas were hitting the debris in the water first, driving the tail end of the mast that is still kind of tangled with the rigging and everything up onto the deck of the boat. And then the wave would hit the hull of the boat and throw it out from under the mast. Oh. And so it was creating this really aggressive kind of push, shove, seesaw motion. And it was so aggressive, it started to literally saw the boat in half. And so time was quite limited because of that. But the pitching, heaving deck, it didn't matter that my bolt cutters were sized for that kind of rigging. You couldn't get any purchase on them. The minute you try and jump on them, a wave would drag you down the deck of the boat. It was just an impossible thing. There were waves, because the boat was now anchored, the waves were breaking over the top of the boat. So every sort of 30 seconds to a minute, I would be up to my chest in white water. Oof. So using a battery-operated angle grinder that's not waterproof is not going to work.
Not going to do that.
So I ended up falling back onto the little dismasting kit with the screwdriver and that worked. But that was slow. And so then about 2 to 3 hours in, I'd managed to finally get the backstay wire off and the inner forestay.
You must have been exhausted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the inner forestay was interesting because the minute it came free, given that it's got the furling drum and the extrusion up the forestay wire plus the sail wrapped around it, it was like a spear.
Yeah.
And it was getting whipped around the deck of the boat like an angry snake. And if I had been close enough that it hit me, it probably would have crushed a rib or something. And so I had my perfect James Bond moment where I had to wait for the boat to lean one way. I ran up the deck of the boat and then grabbed the furling drum, threw it as the boat then launched the other way, and I ran up the other side to get back to safety and get out of harm's way. But all the safety rails were ripped off completely on starboard, so there was no safety on that side of the boat. That was also the side the waves were coming over, so thankfully they were pushing me into the port railings. You couldn't be tethered all the time because of all the ropes and the debris across the boat. And I still had this mast stump that was getting pushed and shoved and with jagged bits of metal and stuff on the deck that you had to get past to get forward. So you'd have to kind of make a decision, a conscious choice to unclip myself and run past the mast and rigging up the deck of the boat in the night in the Southern Ocean, in freezing temperatures. If you were overboard, you're gone. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no
done.
recovery from that.
Yeah.
And then I'd retether on the other side when I'd get to kind of a clear zone. But like these waves were like, I still struggle to kind of describe it properly because it's like being hit with a freight train.
Yeah.
And so the wave will hit and it doesn't matter how strong you are, you can't hold on. And so it'll hit and I'll be huddled at the bow of the boat on the port side trying to disconnect the forestay wire. And I'm just suddenly like back at the shrouds, like, and the mast is like right near my head, dragging, like stabbing forward. And then you got to scramble and crawl forward again and try and hook yourself in and try and get your tools there and not lose anything overboard. And so anyway, it was like 3 hours of this at this point. And when I got to the forestay wire, the way the mast had fallen, it blocked my access to the split pin. And because you've got all the extrusion, all the sails, all that crap there, you can't get to the actual wire to cut it or to try and cut it. And so, and it was actually Kay Cotty that said this at the end. She's like, why didn't you think of using a hacksaw? And I was like, that's the only thing I didn't think of because I thought it would take too long. And in reality, it was probably going to be faster than what I was doing, but I didn't know that at the time. And I was just in kind of focused survival mode. But the way it had broken, because that was blocked, I worked out that I had 2 possible choices to disconnect this forestay wire. And one was to jam my like left arm underneath the furling drum and all the debris that's there and put my screwdriver in the fitting. And with my right hand, I could wrap it and basically hug the furling drum around the rigging and smash it out with the hammer from that angle. But because of the way the inner forestay had come free, I knew if I did that, I'd probably crush my arm or break a rib. And then I might be in a position where I can't save the rest of the boat.
Yeah.
The only other choice I had at that time with the tools and the equipment and my mindset and where I was with everything, the only thought I had was to climb over the safety rails and sit down on the bowsprit at the front of the boat. But I can't hold on when I'm on the deck of the boat, let alone sitting on the prodder out the front on that stick that extends out the front.
Yeah.
So I knew that if I didn't do that, the boat would sink, period. Like the hole was so big already and she was getting worse quite rapidly by that point. And I knew if I went out there, I probably had a 50-50 shot of survival. And so I went inside and I called my shore manager up, Jeff, and I told him like an update. And Jeff's like this super like just bubbly, enthusiastic. He's a master and like just, been around ships for his whole life. And so I told him all the updates and he's like, well done, Lisa, we're behind you in Australia. And I'd like made national news across Australia at like 5 a.m. that morning. And he's like, just keep at it. You got it. And then I said to him, I've got to go out on the bowsprit. And he understood straight away. He's like, oh, okay, I understand. And at this point, I'd been exposed to the freezing cold for about 3 hours. So I was going into hypothermia. Yeah. The ability to hold tools, I couldn't feel anything. So I had to look physically at my hand to know it was shut and things like that. Like I couldn't use, like I was losing that mobility and I could feel the brain fog coming on. And there were moments where I'd just be crouched and then like come to and like go, oh, what was I doing again? Like that fogginess, that lost feeling was there. And I knew also that if I was washed off the boat and in the water, I'd have less than 10 minutes of survival.
And there was no door to hang on to, was there?
There was nothing. The bow rail.
That Titanic moment just wasn't there for you.
No, I didn't have a door. I didn't have a prince to get me a door to lay on. I didn't have a Leo. No, I had climate action now and she survived me. But yeah, it was just hectic and like that decision and that conversation, like I had to say to him, like, if my PLB is activated, it's because I'm gone. Like, don't come and rescue me. That's my only communication tool to tell him I'm lost at sea and to tell my family that I'm lost. And like, we talk about morality at sea quite a lot and like I talk about it with my family and I've had firm conversations. I set up a will and I did all of that stuff before departure with the full knowledge that I'm going out and doing this of my own free choice. I'm putting myself in this position. I would never expect anyone to rescue me because that's not an option when you do a record like this. I wouldn't want someone to put themselves in a position of risk to aid me for doing this. And but it's very different to have those conversations and to be comfortable with the risk you're undertaking, because you're at least living your dreams and you're out there having a life. Like, you know, you're not letting it stop you.
Yeah.
But then to crawl back up on that bow and like go out there with the full knowledge that in the next 5 minutes I might not be alive.
Yeah.
Like that's
scary.
Yeah, that was the big thing for me.
Yeah.
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 So
I'm tearing up talking about it again.
I can imagine. I should imagine that probably helps, does it? Talking about it.
I mean, I do a lot of keynote speaking and stuff now where I'm talking about it quite a lot. And I tear up on stage every time, because I think it's really important that if I'm going to share that story, I share it with authenticity. And to do that, you need to feel that again. But yeah, like I was able to get out there. I was able to stay attached to the boat and free the rigging, but I was getting completely submerged underwater, holding your breath for, 10 seconds to 15 seconds at a time. As this wave just tries to rip you off, and you're just using everything you've got to stay attached.
Yeah.
But you're still reacting.
Yes.
You're not thinking necessarily, you're reacting to this situation. And for me, it was really that preparation and planning that gave me enough logic to process the situation fast enough to deal with it and survive it.
Yeah.
But, after that night, and the mast tore off the deck of the boat when I finally got the last pieces of rigging free and sank in the Southern Ocean, and I had a retrieval line on it. But because the boat was getting lifted up 8 meters at a time and the mast is like an anchor, it just snapped that line, and it bent the rail and everything that it was attached to. It snapped the line, and I lost everything overboard. The only thing I'd managed to salvage was my boom.
Yeah.
And so 3 days later, I rendezvoused with a container ship to do a fuel transfer. And they collided with me and nearly sank the boat in as many days.
God.
And it's a whole nother scenario that took place. And then eventually I built a new mast with the boom and jury rigged and made my way to Cape Town 10 days after the initial kind of emergency. But it was this weird feeling of like just being like lost and adrift. And like my whole focus for 3.5 years had been that goal. And because of an electrical cable chafing through, I'd gone through all of that.
Yeah.
And it was just like I just felt like I'd just lost my baby. Like I was grieving for all of that. But by the time I got to Cape Town, I was so stubborn. And as I'm sure you've learnt by now, I'm a pretty stubborn person when I set my mind to something.
I don't think you achieve what you achieve without being a certain character.
But yeah, I decided by then that if I could do it with one stop and set the women's record, I wouldn't get the men's record, but I could still go back to where I just mastered, repair the boat, go back, finish the trip. It took me 2 months to repair the damage to the boat because it was that expensive.
You're kind of landed on land for 2 months in a place that you don't really know.
I didn't know anybody.
And you didn't have any contacts there, all that sort of thing.
So
how did that go?
Yeah, well, thankfully, like a lady here, Linda Freilenken-Anderson, she is very active on a social media group we have in Australia called Women Who Sail Australia. And there's a global version of that called Women Who Sail. And then in a lot of the different countries around the world, there's Women Who Sail France, Women Who Sail New Zealand, all this. And it's just a really welcoming like group of women who support women who want to get on boats. And so she put a post up saying, hey, Lisa from Australia has landed. She's dismasted. She's got $0, nowhere to stay, no way out, can anyone help her? And this lovely, incredible families, like there was about 15 people on the dock, none of them I'd ever met before, welcoming me in. They brought champagne down. They took me out to dinner. They let me stay in their spare room. Amazing. And then I moved in with this family for like 2 months and stayed at their house and became best friends with them. And they would help run me around. And we literally called every yacht club in Africa trying to find a mast secondhand that I could buy to put in the boat because I couldn't afford a new mast and I, had almost no money. And thankfully my sponsors were just so incredible to resupply like the rigging wire, the ropes, that's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And all of that had to get sent from Australia. So then you got all the customs side of things and it was a mess, but we got there.
Yeah.
But by the time I left, it was winter in the Southern Ocean.
Oh, my goodness. I hadn't planned for that.
I hadn't planned for that.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of talking with people who had done a lot of Southern Ocean sailing and some who had done some winter sailing down there. And the biggest thing that they could kind of tell me was that A, it was just cold all the time, like a lot more cold. So freezing of ice on the rigging and things like that could be a problem. But that the waves were going to be bigger. And by bigger, 5 meters bigger.
Wow.
So the average storm in summer would generate a swell height in the peak of the storm of about 10 meters in the Southern Ocean, whereas the average storm in winter was a peak of 15 meters.
15 meters?
And that's the average. So then you get your sets come through. They could be 40% higher. The storm moves if you're trying to skirt the edges. Anyway, so it was this mess. So I still thought with what the boat had gone through that we could do it. And so I left, and as I left, the media got a hold of it and the world found out about it. And I had so many people email, message, call my family. Like, this guy got a hold of my mum's number, was phoning her saying, don't let your daughter leave, it's suicide. She's never coming home again if she does this. And, you know, all of this stuff was happening in the background.
Wow.
Then I got super seasick. So spewing my guts up off the side of the boat, trying to pass the shipping lanes below Cape Town, and which is a major shipping lane there. So there's like 16 ships coming at me at one point, and I'd like try and alter the boat's course, pause on, hit on autopilot, spew up off the side of the boat, and then keep going because you've got no choice. Like there's no one else.
Yeah.
And then I got a massive head cold and a chest infection, and I couldn't shake the chest infection, and I had to, after about 5 days of basically doing donuts, waiting for a gap across these major storms to get south of them to enter that racetrack kind of coordinates again. I had to make a call on whether I felt I was healthy enough to continue because this flu was like knocking me for 6.
Yeah.
And I decided that, I'd go through it, but we couldn't get south of these storms. So I had to go through the storms, not around them. And so I ended up like sailing for a day, hoving to for a day, sailing for a day, hoving to. But when I'd be hove to, I'm hove to in 15-meter breaking seas in the middle of the Southern Ocean with 80 to 90 knots of wind blowing over the boat.
Wow.
And so you're hove to, but then the boat will get hit by a wave, almost flipped upside down, come back upright. Sometimes I got hit by a wave so hard on the bow of the boat, it flipped the boat 180 degrees sideways and started sailing me again. And then I would like just hang out in bed and watch the autopilot and be like, oh yeah, it's driving me back to jibe. And so I'd jibe back through and go back into hove to from my bunk. And like, so it was the most insane weather conditions I've ever sailed through. Well, until the last trip, but
just explain to the listeners what hove to means.
Yeah, so hove to is a storm survival tactic. So there's 2 tactics that are commonly deployed. One is using a drogue, which is like a sea anchor, but the labor of deploying and recovering that, particularly solo, was so great and given that I was doing it every couple of hours, it was too high in intensity. So the other option is hoving to. And what you do is you have your sails balanced for the wind. So you got your reefs in or your storm jib up or whatever that is for the wind amount that you have. And you tie the mainsail as tight to the center of the boat as you can. And then you effectively, most people will tack their boat into the position, but leave the jib on the wrong side of the boat. So it's backwinding the jib. And then you tie your helm or your tiller or your rudder or whatever you've got so that it's driving the boat into the wind. So it's trying to turn you up into the wind. And the combination of forces means that as your boat gets powered up by the mainsail and gets steerage, because the rudder gets flow of water, it tries to drive you up into the wind. As you drive up, because the mainsail's flat and tight and in the center of the boat, it depowers the mainsail, so it loses wind, and then the jib is backed, so the wind fills the jib and pushes the bow away again. And you end up in this little kind of S's that you do kind of along the ocean, this little wiggling line where you kind of get driven up, pushed back, driven up, pushed back. But you can hold position there quite well. And on the more classic boats with the long keel, because you're getting pushed sideways pretty well, you create this body of slick on the surface of the ocean. And it has a very similar effect to what the old shipping industry used to use when they would pour oil on the surface of the water to calm the sea. And so the waves would hit this area of disturbed water, the slick, and they would either break on the edge of it because they're about to break anyway, or they would soften and go under the boat. So it creates this area of protection.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a really, really amazing tool. So many people I know will do it just to like make dinner and have lunch. If you've got a medical emergency, put the boat hove to, drift sideways. You can deal, it's a more stable platform. You can get stuff done. And in storms, you might still be heeled at like 45 degrees or even 60 degrees over, but you're stable at that position. You're not coming up and going back down again. So it's a really, really handy technique. And for my boat, though, because I'm a racing boat and I have a bold racing keel, like one of those long, bold keels, I didn't have enough like displacement of water to create a big enough slick.
Yeah.
And so because of the windage on the boat and the way the boat's shaped, she would drive forward a little bit as well. So I would find the back 3/4 of my boat would be protected, but the bow would be pretty well exposed to these waves coming through. So we definitely copped a few like really bad hits on the front of the boat there. Sometimes it sounded like it had cracked the hull because of the violence of the impact.
Yes.
And I'd have to get kitted up in my gear and climb out into the storm and hang my head off the side of the boat to check I haven't got a ruptured hull. Like it was just, and while I'm in these storms hove to, I would just try and sleep.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because the safest place to be was my bunk.
Yeah. It's actually a really good technique for, I don't know if any of our listeners know this, but we've got a beautiful 1964 ex-Sydney to Hobart timber yacht.
Perfect technique for a boat like that.
Yeah. So we actually we needed to get on her mid pit water.
Yes.
So we were on a little speedboat from the Freda Boat Club, and John brought the boat hove to so that we could just hop on her, stop across really easily, and then go off sailing without taking any of the sails down. So it's actually a really good way of transferring people onto your boat as well, isn't it? If you're
definitely. We do it also with the ladies of the Sea Regatta at the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron. So all the coach changeovers, they'll try and get the boats hove to, and then it's much, much safer for us to step up onto the boat. Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Yeah, but I know people who every afternoon for their sundowners, for their 1 hour when everyone's on deck, they'll hove to and everyone just has a chat. You've got plenty of water and sea room and they'll just hang out.
Yeah, love it.
You still move though. I'd still be going 5 knots in those kind of winds sideways.
Yeah.
And so depending on what tack I hove to on, what direction I put the wind on, I could choose whether it was pushing me closer to my destination or further away. So it's a good technique in the sense that if you're closer to land, depending on your wind direction, say you're 100 mile offshore, but you don't want to be blowing to the land, you can hove to on the right direction that allows you to blow kind of parallel to the land rather than to the land. And you generally drift at around a 150 wind angle. So like imagine broad reach, it's kind of that drift line. So it's a really great technique though.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, so we've had a lot of drama here.
Oh, yeah. My life is in tethers at the moment.
But the human brain is designed to cope with a moment like that at the time and just do everything that you need to do to make yourself survive, right?
Definitely.
That's how the human body and brain works together. So you've done that.
Yeah.
You've achieved that. When did it hit?
Even like the restart of the record, like from Cape Town, was still kind of that survival mode. I did notice my behavior had drastically changed with my comfort factor and my trust in the boat. And it really took a lot out of me for my belief in what the boat could take or what I could take in the middle of the ocean or my understanding of that. And so I would find my anxiety would be really high in those storms. Every bad whack, I would have to check the mast was still there, that kind of behavior. Yeah. And that only continued to get worse the closer I got to Australia because it was like waiting for it all to go wrong again. Right. And about probably about a week out of finishing the record on that 2017 trip, I noticed that I was getting electrolysis again.
Wow.
And that the electrical cables were having issues again with the new rig setup and the new issues. And I was seeing the same signs and I was about to go into a storm that was going to give me 60-knot headwinds.
Oh, so
and I was freaking out. Like I've got footage of me just bawling my eyes out on deck, just like I knew at that point if I had to go through a situation like that again, I probably wouldn't survive it.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to have to face it.
No,
you
fair
know.
enough. I've done this. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, I've had that moment in time. I've ticked that box. Moving on. But it wasn't, I guess, until a while later that I really started to understand like the effects of trauma on the body, mental well-being, and understanding how that would affect me long term. And so I arrived back on land into Albany, and I officially set the world record as the first woman to circumnavigate Antarctica with one stop.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Great.
Amazing.
I felt like I'd failed. And so the world celebrated it.
Yep.
And I was doing all this press, all these media interviews, all this stuff, and having to be the person that's happy with that result.
Yep.
Whereas I felt like I hadn't achieved what I'd set out to achieve. And that was to break the world speed record and become the fastest person. And there's a couple of things around that. I never set out for a women's record because I don't see that there's any difference between guys and girls on boats. Like we're just sailors.
Yeah. That's
Why
amazing
should
thing
I
about
have a
sailing.
women's record? Like why shouldn't I just be the fastest? And also like I didn't feel like because of the dismasking and everything, we lost a big chunk of momentum with the campaign, with the climate action stuff. And there was so much more I wanted to generate with that I wasn't able to do because of everything else taking place, and that I basically went into survival mode, that I didn't feel like I'd done that justice either. And so I knew before I even set foot on dry land that I was going to attempt that record again. But I also knew mentally I wasn't in a fit state to do it then and there.
Yeah.
And then I came back from that project with nearly 400,000 in bills and debt. And
ouch.
Yeah, and no
Yeah.
way of paying it. So I went straight into doing as many talks, as many events, the speaking circuit, doing, fundraising events at yacht clubs, and I put together the Magenta project, like the all women's team to the Sydney to Hobart. And that was like another 50,000 that I had to find. And I've had success with sponsors, don't get me wrong, but I've not had that golden egg, that golden goose sponsor that steps up every time and goes, yeah, we believe in what you're doing. We want to support you. How much is it going to cost? Let's do it. It's never been that easy. It's been a mix mash of 40 or 50 different brands coming together to help me get going. And I'm incredibly grateful for them, but it makes it incredibly difficult to manage. But also that whole idea of consistently trying to find that next 10,000 or that next 20 to round off the budget. And so I left for that project with nearly 300,000 in bills still to pay. And the only way I would get an opportunity to do that was if I was successful with that project. So just coming off all the mental side of the dismasking and everything, you then had all the financial stress and the pressures there. And it got to a point where I almost had to declare bankruptcy and sell the boat. And and I knew if that happened, I wouldn't get another chance. And so I put together the Australia project because that helped me continue to fund the boat and helped continue that momentum with the media and all of that. And I also knew I wanted to do a project closer to home to give me a bit of time out of the Southern Ocean to just rebuild that trust back up and everything, and just kind of get my head around it. And before I left for Antarctica, I had been debating about whether I would go for the nonstop solo around Australia record in a monohull. And I decided at the time that it was actually more risky and had a higher chance of failure than doing Antarctica.
Really?
Massively so. Yeah.
Wow.
So if you think about Antarctica as open ocean, you've got these big storms. You might have icebergs, but I've got techniques to avoid the ice. If the boat can handle the storms, then you're in the middle of the ocean. There's not a lot to hit.
Ocean.
And there's no one there.
Yeah.
Around Australia, you've got traffic the whole way around Australia. You've got reefs, rocks, islands. You've got changing weather patterns as the hot air off the land. So you're doing a lot more sail changes. You're still sleeping the 20-minute micro sleep. So it took me 58 days and I didn't sleep for more than 20 minutes in 58 days. So just the mental draw on that. And the biggest risk, I think, for me in a trip like that is actually your fiberglass fishing boats. You know, the little half cab runner out.
Yeah, they go out a long way, don't they?
They can be 10, 15 mile offshore. They don't have AIS. They don't have a radar reflector. They're fiberglass, so you can't see them on your instruments.
No.
The only way you can see them is looking forward.
Yeah, got a good story on that one. We were out on a cruise to Moreton Bay Island, so in a big cruise ship, right? And there's this little tiny, exactly one of those tiny little fiberglass fishing boat. And somebody on the cruise shop says, oh, look, there's a little boat. We need to go and rescue the little boat. And of course, as a ship, it is their requirement that they have to go and rescue the boat if somebody thinks that boat is in trouble.
Wow.
So they're radioing this little
Nobody's got their
fishing boat.
radio on.
Nobody's got their radio on. They're not listening. So this cruise ship is suddenly coming down on this tiny little fishing boat.
I think he might have been a bit worried by then.
Finally, he answers his radio and they say, "Are you okay?" And he says, "Oh, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just fishing." So then the cruise ship turns around and goes away again. Oh, my goodness. So please, all the little fiberglass fishing boats out there.
Put a radar reflector.
Radio reflectors and radios on. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's just like when I'm going, like if I'm surfing waves, I've got good wind behind me, like I'll get the boat up to 20 knots. Like I've had her up to 28.3 knots napping in bed. Like it's, so you can't be barreling down waves and maybe have like, and there's areas where you can kind of plan that you're likely to have a higher quantity of these kind of boats out there. And so I'll be more on deck in those periods. But sometimes you can't see them till you're almost on top of them because of the size of the waves. And anyway, so that was like one of the biggest things for me. But the trip did allow me to kind of process things a little bit, but it was actually writing the book.
Okay.
Because all of this time, so this is a year and a half after the record, I'm just still in that got to keep moving forward, got to keep going, I've got to figure out a way, there's got to be a solution, just keep trying, I'll find a way kind of mode. And it's not, there's no recovery in that mode. There's no resting. There's no mental well-being. There's none of that. You're still in that kind of survival game of like, if I don't keep doing this, I lose everything.
Yeah.
And so like I came to the writing of the book and this was like my gift from COVID is that I lost all my work that was lined up and I had the ability to sit and write the book. Mm-hmm. And so I forced myself to write the book and thankfully Australian Geographic had been an amazing partner of mine and they put their hand up to publish it. So they assigned me an editor and I was like, right, this is my window, let's get it done. But it was reliving all of those scenarios, going through the dismasting and trying to write it in a way that felt authentic but also put people in the boat in that moment in time. It really forced me to kind of look at the broader picture of what went on in that situation. And I came away from writing the book with the understanding that as terrible as that experience was, without that experience, I wouldn't be half the sailor I am today. It made me so much stronger as a sailor because it showed to me in the biggest black and white case you could possibly see that I could go out and face an absolute worst case scenario at sea. And I know that my preparation and planning is enough to allow me to survive it.
Yeah.
And so it instilled, once I really had that time to sit down and process it, it really did instill that confidence in me to know that the way I'm tackling things, my procedures, the risk avoidance that I have on the trips and the boat is the right technique. And it allowed me to really kind of come out of it stronger.
Yeah.
So that helped. And then like 2021 was still in COVID. The world's still in, going to the crap. And basically I decided, well, now's a good window. Let's get the boat prepped. And so I took the boat to Brisbane. Canva signed on as my first partner. It wasn't enough to get me to the start line, but it was really a huge amount of money to get me going.
Yeah.
And so I made the commitment, all right, 2022, I'm going to go and do this project again. So we refitted for 6 months. All the repair work in Cape Town was bad and it had to be cut out and redone. All the glass hadn't gone off. It was still soft glass in it. Yeah, it was a weird, maybe it was old stuff that they'd used or something. But it was like a $300,000 refit into the boat, plus then all the project costs and everything. But the benefit of it was that I now have an opportunity, and we haven't really touched on this yet, but the boat's called Climate Action Now, and I run this big sustainability campaign.
Yeah. And is that when you put the fantastic little Post-it note look all over it?
That was way back in 2015 for the first Hobart. Really? Yeah, so I've been running that campaign for about 8 years by this point. Yeah. So what I do with the Climate Action campaign, just for those who aren't familiar, and if you Google a photo of the boat, or maybe you can put it in the show notes, but it's filled with thousands of different Post-it note messages all across the hull. And each Post-it note is an environmental action that somebody's already doing that I've met, and they've seen the boat or they've emailed it to me from around the world. And it's their action that they're doing to make the world a better place. And it can be absolutely anything. So the whole idea is to show people that as an individual, you have the power to create change. It just starts with one action. And it could be something like Sally has short showers, Joe turns the lights off when he leaves the room, Bob picks up rubbish off the beach when he walks his dog. And it's throwing the power back to those micro decisions that we make every single day. Do I want to buy the laundry powder packaged in plastic or the one with cardboard? Do I want to buy the fruit packaged in plastic or the one that's loose? Like, we make all these decisions every day, and it's trying to show people that A, they matter, but you also have the ability to create a positive change in those situations. Exactly. So I've been running that for about 6 years at this point.
And just to explain to the listeners who haven't seen Lisa's boat, Lisa's boat was at Sydney Boat Show last year, and it attracts a massive amount of attention because it looks like a whole bunch of little coloured Post-it notes have been stuck onto it.
Yes.
I'm assuming it's a wrap, is it?
It is, yeah.
So it's really colourful. It's really attention-seeking. And it's a really clever idea because it's a whole bunch of messages. And then I think you were having people write little messages.
I collect messages at every talk and event. I still collect them. We actually at the moment have a 6-metre long wall in the Maritime Museum in Sydney of Post-it notes, and we're collecting messages. So it's a growing campaign, and I'm doing as much as I can with it. And for anyone listening around the world, if you go to the website and go to Climate Action Now, get involved, you can actually email me your message, and that will go on the boat for the next project. So it's an active, ongoing campaign.
So amazing. Such a good idea. But that let's delve into that now. That is your real focus of having a message. So I know you've said before you don't sail for you now. You sail for this cause.
Yes,
you?
Definitely. So it sort of started, I guess, with like the Clipper race and stuff, was like self-seeking. And then when we did the Clipper race, we sailed around the world, and there were sections of the ocean, like we were at 48 degrees south in the Southern Ocean between Cape Town and Australia, and I was helming the boat across a wave, and as I peeked on the wave, I saw a white styrofoam box in the water in the middle of the Southern Ocean, literally 2,000 nautical miles from land, in the most pristine, beautiful environment, and we're seeing that human impact. And then we had areas like particularly up past like Indonesia, China, across the North Pacific, where the pollution in the water was so thick, we had to assign a crew member to the bow of the boat with a boat hook to push the rubbish out of the way of the boat so we could sail through.
Wow.
Like, it was just disgusting. And there were areas where you just felt like the complete absence of life.
Yeah.
And like, obviously, like all of us sailors have noticed that the weather patterns are becoming unstable or hard to predict. They're not doing what they've always done. So all of these things like ultimately came to me deciding that if I'm going to do records, then I want to do them for a real cause that's going to make genuine impact. And that started with the Climate Action, which is still very much an active campaign. And then...
Wow. Don't worry. That interview does not finish there. I don't know about you, but talking to Lisa has brought out emotions, and it's an incredible story that she tells. So we are going to do a second episode because she and I spent a good couple of hours chatting together, and there's so much more to be told. So there will be a second episode of her coming out in the near future, and I can't wait to share that with you all. It's such a pleasure to do these podcasts. I really enjoy bringing them to your ears. I hope you enjoy them as much as we do. I do appreciate everybody that reviews the podcast and follows the podcast. That makes a big, big difference to how many people get to hear these amazing stories. So please, as soon as you've stopped listening to this podcast, if you could review and follow the podcast, I'd really, really appreciate that, as would Lisa, because of course In this instance, the more funding we can get for Lisa to achieve what she wants to achieve, in turn, we can make a difference to the environment altogether. And that's really important. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I really appreciate it. I'll see you on the water soon.